let's get into reality here. Joe, as Joe Castiglione, the AD of Oklahoma, is announced that he will be retiring. We're going to take a little bit of a different avenue here, but a big-time AD, a really good AD, who saw that Oklahoma find themselves in the situation of pushing themselves into the SEC, has announced his retirement. But, Joe, the first thing that came out when Castiglione announced his retirement was, what does that mean for Brent Venables? I guess your thoughts on Castiglione retiring, and then what do you think this ultimately means for Oklahoma?
Well, first of all, Castiglione's been a great athletic director, ambassador of the program, and he's done some great things. And the biggest thing that you just mentioned there was opening the door, not opening the door because Texas was a part of it, but being a part of the transition to the SEC. I'd be curious who they go to hire, but as you just let in there, what does this mean for Brent Venables? He has been talked about as one of the coaches that if they don't perform well and they don't show a sign of improvement, what is that sign of improvement? 8 wins, 9 wins. How will he be sitting at the end of the year? I think that this now creates a potentially hotter seat than what it would have been at the end of this season. Castiglione hired him, having the AD who hired you, and as long as you have a good relationship, that keeps you alive for longer. That's why he got an extension. He got an extension because Castiglione clearly liked Venables.
What was this hire? He was supposed to.
Right. You're going to do, if you're an athletic director, we see this in the history of the sport, you're going to give the guy that you hired as many chances as possible and as much resources as possible to prove that you were making the right decision. You need to prove to the administration that you know how to hire and the guy that you hired knows how to coach. So depending on who they go with, unless they promote within, this could be problematic for Venables if they don't do that well this year.
I'm going to take the opposite approach. The opposite approach to this would be, well, Joe, when are they going to hire an AD? And he said at the end of the season. He said at the end of the year that he would step down, which means are they going to hire somebody in waiting? Like, what is Oklahoma going to do here? I don't know if it doesn't buy him another year. He says he's retiring at the end of the year. So unless he retires and the next day an AD is hired, I don't know if the first overall move at the end of the year come December is fire Brent Venables. I don't know a world where Castiglione steps down, okay, and retires, and then a guy gets hired. Let's just hypothetically, because he said at the end of the year, let's say he retires on December the 31st for whatever that's worth, or December 30th, whatever day it is. How can you hire an AD? Number one, you got to find somebody. That's number one. They haven't even made a hire then. Then you get, let's just say for argument's sake, they actually do and are productive and hire someone on December the 30th. You mean to tell me that the first move within weeks, because it's got to be within a week, you can't sit there and not fire Brent Venables the day that you're bringing in there, and then you fire the man. I don't know if I see a world where this doesn't buy him a year regardless of what happens, unless the outright wheels fall off. The training wheels on the bicycle, the wheels on the bicycle, the handlebars, the seat, everything's got to come off here for I feel like for him to be fired. Because again, it's Joe, if he would have said, I'm retiring and I'm moving on, let's just say August, I could have said, well, hey, who knows? Maybe a president gets involved and fires the man. Again, I don't know. I just don't know if I can see a world where they move on from him, because I can't see an acting AD, a first time or an AD coming into a situation in his first move within a week, hypothetically, considering how most AD's hires are made. And Oklahoma, for what it's worth, may have all of this settled behind closed doors and we don't know it. But on the surface, there's just no way that I see that he gets let go here. None.
So I think that's obviously a good point, that the timeline here, it's unlikely to see an athletic director immediately get hired and just we're kicking you to the curb, you're out, we're getting rid of you. I think that like where that timeline would come into play, though, a new hire is going to want to have his chance to bring in his own guy at some point. So the leash might not be completely cut off at the end of this season if Venables doesn't do well. But I would argue for the 2026 college football season, the leash would be abnormally short. So say that, the season's mediocre this year. It doesn't go well. They win 7 games again. An 8-win season, or maybe missing the college football playoff in the first year of the new AD might lead to the firing then. But I don't know what the intention is here with Venables. We talked about in the preview that we think that they could be competitive and good this year. You're right. The dynamics of that are very complicated.
Which they attacked us for, by the way.
Which I'm shocked that they were upset with it.
And what they were upset about, the fan base. Oh, our offensive line, they can get better. Brother, so can every defensive line in the country.
Yeah, I don't like the argument like, well, we could get better. Oklahoma State's offensive line returned all of its starting offensive linemen last year.
It got
worse. It got worse. And I pointed that out in the preview last year. But so here's one. I looked up 2 names to know, 2 candidates to know possibly for this. And one of the ones that's brought up in this article on SI, Marcus Bowman, who is on Oklahoma's staff. So one of the names is being brought up, who is the deputy athletics director for business development and revenue generation. If they try to go more in a business direction with the hire and stick with somebody internal, and they do go with Bowman, maybe that would still leave the window open for what I'm talking about here of a potential immediate firing.
All right, let's get there. If you're correct, and let's say they do go that direction, then Venables can be in trouble.
Okay.
Right? I mean, if you're hiring someone that's already there, yes, he can be in trouble. Joe, if they don't go there and they go from an outside source, no, they're not. No. I don't see an avenue where you can let the man go. Again, he's got to hypothetically go 6-6 this year. But here's the problem with that. What is Oklahoma's goal of what they're trying to do here? Like what in the Big Ten, if you're not going 10-2, it's a bad season. In the SEC, they don't want to relinquish this, but they're going to have to. Is 8-4 a good season for them? Like I know that they think that they're going to be better, and hell, John Mateer could lead them to 9-3, 10-2 for all we know at the current moment. For all we know, this kid could be very special. The bottom line remains, if he does not, and they do not, take that next step, if they don't get to 8-9 wins, he's in trouble. We're coming out here from a year from now saying, hey, man, they got to play Texas again. They got to play Bama. It doesn't change. Joe, they got to play Georgia. They got to play Texas. They got to play LSU. Like, it's not going to slow down. Like, the Big Ten and the SEC does not slow down for you. It's not going to. By the way, you're not recruiting at a level to keep the man. Like, you just come to a point where, Joe, if they do hire from within, this could be trouble. Castiglione, for what it's worth, I thought was a good AD. I also think he's getting out before real shit hits the fan.
It's a fair point to bring up that, like, as it kind of looks like things could be tumultuous for the next couple of years. Yeah, going out after a successful transition to the SEC and not going well, it's the next guy's responsibility to figure it out. We haven't talked about the recruiting stuff, by the way, and I don't intend to us to really dig into it, but I've talked to a couple people that have been shocked by how bad their recruiting has been, and I don't know if there is going to be some spark that happens around signing day and they just suddenly bring in a lot of big names, or maybe they decide they want to be a transfer portal team, and that's why they brought in Nagy.
They just got the big tight end Tyler Ruxer, the 4-star. But I mean, even then, Joe,
They
Sorry,
have not
cut
been.
you off, but-
All I had else was that they have not been recruiting to the typical Oklahoma standard that we're used to seeing.
Joe, 2.5, 3 years ago, I went in Oklahoma Spaces, Twitter Spaces, and brother, they were throwing all kinds of shade. When we started Ruffino and Joe show, they were throwing all kinds of shade at me because I said their thought was when we put on the SEC patch, we're going to get some of these kids that we weren't getting in the past. The problem has always been in that. Then who are you taking them from? Because to say that you're going to get better recruits means that you're taking them from somebody. Are you going to take them from Bama, Texas, Georgia, LSU, A&M? You're not. You're not. So, again, Venables, for me at the current moment, is, I don't want to say he's in hot water, but, man, that ice is starting to crack.
Yeah. Yeah. It has to be admitted.
He's had 2 6-win seasons in 3 years. I got to ask a God's honest question. In the last 3 years, Mike Norvell had an outright collapse. But if this were anybody else at a big institution, we would be calling for that. I mean, people would be calling for that guy's head.
The reaction to it has been odd. I do think that he gets the benefit of the doubt. And the reason why he signed, he signed the extension right before he came in, and we talked about this. Clearly, his agent wanted to negotiate an extension, knowing that there was going to be a hard, difficult start to the time in the SEC because they were given a really difficult schedule. So that's where the benefit of the doubt comes into play, that this is uncharted waters in a difficult territory. But to what you're talking about, there was this thought that they were going to step in the SEC and the recruiting was going to completely pop off, and it's been fine. There's not there hasn't been an uptick. Texas has had an uptick. Texas has taken full advantage of this, and the guys that you're competing with, that this argument that you were suddenly going to recruit better, you are competing with mostly Texas, that area, that region, that part of the country. You were recruiting against them in that central part of the United States. Like you just said, it's very unlikely that you're going to take guys from other southern territories where they're recruited by the big schools in college football. It just wasn't going to happen. So you thought something was going to change, but the same dynamic is still there. You're competing with Texas. It's still there. It hasn't changed.
No.
They're kicking your ass right now.
Well, and it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
Joe, things have started to separate. Again, that SEC patch don't mean shit. The SEC patch is even when everybody